Well, hello and welcome to tonight's edition of Sunday Politics on Trust TV. This is where we discuss politics and other developing issues within and outside Nigeria. Plus, we give you an opportunity to join the conversation by giving us a call and sharing your thoughts and perspective. My name is Abdullahi Ahmed, standing in for your regular host, Suleiman. Tonight on the program, we talk about women and corruption in Nigeria. Over the past 2 weeks, Nigeria's mainstream and social media space has been inundated with staggering revelations of corruption scandals in the Humanitarian Affairs Ministry. The jaw-dropping allegations and charges of corruption features three prominent figures that all happen to be women. One is the immediate past Minister of the Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation Ministry, then her successor and the suspended National Coordinator of a pivotal agency under the same ministry. All three women are currently under investigation by Nigeria's top anti-graft agency, the EFCC. Now, while corruption is not necessarily a new phenomenon in Nigeria, there is something peculiar about what is happening in the Humanitarian Affairs Ministry that has been established to address the overwhelming poverty situation in the country. The question is, why are the women put in place to channel their empathy and expertise towards poverty alleviation failing spectacularly? Corruption is genderless, but there's something different. Is there something different about what we're witnessing so far? With me to discuss this tonight is Dr. Theophilus Abba, a veteran journalist, member of the editorial board of Daily Trust and program director of the Daily Trust Foundation. Doctor, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us on the program tonight.
Good evening, and thank you for giving the opportunity to share my ideas concerning this subject matter.
Right. First and foremost, let's talk about the topic, women and corruption. What are your thoughts about it, first and foremost?
Well, I was scared when you talked about women and corruption because it shouldn't seem as if we are profiling Nigerian women to say, well, they are corrupt. You know, this is not, the issue. You know, we are actually looking at the fact that these women happen to be in the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, and unfortunately, they are being accused of corruption. And that is where it stops. You know, we are not saying that Nigerian women are corrupt or that corruption has gender. You know, I think we're not saying, we have to make that very clear right from the onset.
Right.
So that some person don't raise placard tomorrow morning to say,
exactly. But in talking about the details of this conversation, the past week has been eye-opening, to say the least. Largely because of how important this particular ministry is. Nigeria has been carrying the shame of being the poverty capital of the world for the past couple of years. Sharing that title with India over the past 6 to 7 years now. Give me a sense of why this conversation is important, especially looking at the significant role this particular ministry is supposed to be playing in helping alleviate this poverty question.
Well, I think it's good to situate that ministry just as you have mentioned. You have a lot of statistics that justifies the establishment of that ministry. You know, before it became a ministry, all the activities were mainly under the Vice President's office. You know, I remember you had the school feeding program, which was under the Vice President's office. We have trader money, which was under the Vice President's office. We had NEMA. You know, NEMA was in charge of disasters. You know, when there was any flood or fire and whatsoever conflict, it was NEMA that would attend to those things. It was under the Vice President's office. And that is to tell you how government valued, you know, or government intended to intervene to support Nigerians who had issues. Then, apart from the fact that the activities were under the Vice President's office, there are statistics that justify them. Number one, you know, Nigeria was like the poverty capital of the world. Then when you talk of out-of-school children, you know, I think we have maybe one of the highest in the world, you know. And you talk about, you know, things like school feeding. Let me look at the school feeding specifically. You know, school feeding was introduced, you know, because research has shown that many parents didn't allow their children to go to school because they didn't have the 15 naira, 100 naira to give to them for lunch. So the philosophy behind it was this: look, if you take that burden off the shoulders of parents, they will allow their children to go to school. And if children are looking forward to sumptuous, a lunch, then they'll be willing to go to school. And as long as they are willing to go to school, so will the literacy level in Nigeria, improve. So that was one of the reasons why we had a school feeding program. And then we'll talk about disasters. Of course, we are victims of disasters. So that ministry is very, very important, very relevant. You see, there's no government that can even, let me say this loosely, win elections without empathy. Right. When you don't empathize with the people, when you don't support them at the point when they need support or when they needed support, you see, you cannot have, you cannot win their hearts to win their vote. Right. So the ministry, is very, very significant.
And let's talk about the strategic thinking that went into putting a woman in charge of that ministry, because we understand that beyond just the emotional connection that women have with empathy as human beings, there is also the fact that they could be very passionate about getting the job done. Let's talk about that strategic thinking and what you make of the results so far. Clearly, it leaves much to be desired.
Okay. Well, it's quite interesting because when the president, former president now, decided to make it a full-fledged ministry, I think that was in 2019, Nigerians said, well, that was the right thing to do. Even though we had a very good vice president who was doing a very good job. But, elevating those things from being a department in the vice president's office to a ministry was quite good. Now, and the woman who became the first minister of humanitarian affairs had a very great credential, because she was in the refugee commission. And refugee commission was actually doing, well, let me use the word sympathetic work, taking care of refugees, those who are displaced from other parts of the world, taking care of them, providing food, providing accommodation, providing health facilities and all this. She was doing a very good job. So when she was given that appointment, it was like a square peg in a square hole, because she had that credential that, look, she could do it. And when she, at the initial, immediately she was given that job, because I tracked what she was doing, right from that initial stage. I told her she was actually doing a good job, putting in place structures, how these things could work. And I felt that she was actually exposed to best standards, international best practices on how those things were conducted. So she demonstrated that she had capacity. Sincerely, she demonstrated that she had capacity. Now, if you talk of Betty Edu, Beta Edu, I don't know, I hope I'm not.
I think it's Beta Edu.
Beta Edu, yes. Right. She also had a very good credential, because I understand she completed her secondary school in 2001, went to the university, studied medicine and surgery, which meant that she was quite good, quite brilliant. She had a grade to study medicine and surgery, and then she graduated, went abroad, I think either UK or US, to study public health. And when she returned to Nigeria, she was lucky. She got an appointment with government. Later, she was moved to Primary Healthcare Development Agency in Cross River State. Then she did very well during COVID-19 because she was able to handle COVID-19 challenges in Cross River State. Because I followed that, because at the point she was actually the person who was actually talking about COVID-19, defending what government was doing in Cross River State. And I think 2019 she was appointed Minister of Health. What I'm saying is this:
Commissioner of Health.
Commissioner of Health. If she didn't have this track record, you understand, then she wouldn't have qualified to be minister. And I think those who nominated her for the ministerial position say, look, if this young lady, she has done this good job at the state level, let's see how she can, replicate it at the national level. So if you look at the track record of these two women, you know that, look, you see, they qualified, in terms of education, in terms of maybe exposure, yes, expertise. They were quite good, but the problem, I think the problem may be systemic. You understand? The problem will be systemic because we later began to hear stories that were unpalatable about the Humanitarian Affairs Ministry. You know, for instance, one of them that got so close to me was that they went to a place in Kogi State during the COVID-19 palliatives, gathered people together, they wrote down their names, they took their pictures and said, oh, we're coming with palliatives, and the palliatives didn't arrive. And some of the investigations that were done into some of the palliatives proved that, you know, there was so much noise made about, you know, taking palliatives to the people, but the majority of the people who expected palliatives didn't get palliatives. Either that ended up with some political leaders, ended up in the residences of some traditional rulers, and all this and all. So there was a whole lot of problems that we had, you know, with the palliatives and some of the, the distribution of materials to people who needed them, until, you know, we started hearing about some of these huge funds, you know, being tampered with.
Yeah, and you know, interestingly, within this particular period, because there's the scandal of the whole homegrown school feeding program that the former minister said was in effect when most of the schools were shut down because of the management of the pandemic. But interestingly, there was this report that was published somewhere around 2019. With the title "Corruption in Nigeria: Patterns and Trends," that highlights and says women in the country are less likely to pay bribes if they're being sought after by public officials. And then when they're in government, they're also less likely to take bribes because of perhaps their virtue and also by being less than likely to be corrupt in this manner. Give me a sense of, I mean, you just talked about some of the issues there, but what went wrong if these individuals were square pegs in square holes? What went wrong? You did talk about systematic, and I was wondering if you can elaborate a little bit on that, because there's some people who seem to believe that they were set up to fail because the system was somehow designed not to work, and that's why they were never going to survive it, no matter how good they were.
Okay, well, I wouldn't doubt that report that you are referring to, even though I have not read it. Because one thing we know about women is that women are proud, in the sense that they don't want any negative thing about them. You know, so men may not bother about it. If you tell them that they are corrupt, it doesn't mean anything to them. But women, they will say, no, I am not. They want to fight it. They want to say, look, I am innocent and all those things. So I think that, hypothetically, women would not want to be seen to be corrupt. Women would not want to be to give bribes and things like that. Now, when you talk about, you know, a systemic problem, now, some of the things that went wrong, you know, I've not done any in-depth investigation into it, but some of the things that went wrong may have to do with procurement. You know, may have to do with procurement. And now, if you look at corruption, talk about corruption in this public service, or maybe let me do public service, you know, they're actually linked to corruption. I mean, to procurement, you know. And the procurement has a process. You know, something happened when Sadia was reacting to the allegation of money laundering, about 30-something billion, you know, being traced to somebody, one James Okwete, and then she was invited by the FCC. She was saying, I don't know anything about it. Yes, it's possible she didn't know anything about it, because the procurement has a process. You understand? You know, and what she may be signing may be at the tail end of the process. So some other things may have gone wrong right from the beginning. Well, let me explain. For instance, if you talk about procurement, the tender process is there. There are people who are in charge of tender. You know, you want people to supply, let's say, rice, you know, that you are going to give to victims of flood, for instance. There's anything like that. You want some person to supply rice. Then people will bid. Say, okay, I'll supply rice at 20,000 naira per bag, 30,000 naira per bag. You understand? They'll be bidding, and people will say, okay, let's unveil with the bidding. The minister may not be there. Then some persons who are in charge, you know, maybe conflict of interest. Somebody say, okay, this is my brother, this is my friend, this is my schoolmate, this is my uncle, this is my this. You know, his own must pass through. You know, they just collect this thing, and then they say, okay, what happened that you supply for at what cost? You know, the cost may be, inflated, and then the quantity may not be supplied. You know, so many things will happen in the process. But as the chief executive, you take responsibility. You understand? You take responsibility for some of these things. So in the bidding process, there could be maybe conflict of interest, people giving this to their friends or their brothers. They may not supply all the things that were going to be supplied. They may inflate the cost. The process of even transporting some of the things to locations, some persons may pilfer it. A whole lot of things will happen. And it is not only the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs that these things happen. If you go to so many other ministries, in fact, some persons came up with the hypothesis that, look, these things were exposed because they were women. That, look, there may be worse things happening in other government ministry, departments, and agencies that people have, they've mastered the craft of hiding it from EFCC and the ICPC, and are doing it brilliantly, so you will not hear. But maybe because
do you believe there's some credibility to that argument that these women are being scapegoated, not because they're the only ones doing it, but they're easier to catch and easier to put out there in the public domain?
No, I don't think they are being scapegoated, because if there are clear evidence of violations of the rules, you understand, and of course, before you become minister, you are taking through the rules. If you violated them, we shouldn't be talking about scapegoats. You understand? For instance, Betta was saying, there was nothing wrong in putting money in somebody's account, so much money in somebody's account. Now, if the civil service says it shouldn't be so, and it happened, and she's saying, there was nothing wrong, it means that it was like a practice. You understand? It was, this is normal. I saw them doing it. And some of the questions I have raised in the case of Betta is this. You have the PAMSEC. You said you have the PAMSEC, who knows all the rules. If 500 and something million is moving from the ministry's account, I think the PAMSEC should not be ignorant of it. You have internal auditors, then you have other accountants there, the layers of signatories, and I don't know how, it evaded them. You have anti-corruption desk in almost every government agency. You have what you call anti-corruption desk. And I don't know, the anti-corruption desk was supposed to say, okay, sniff around, say, this thing that is happening cannot be, in line with anti-corruption policy of government. I was thinking that there should be intervention at one level or another. But it's like, well, this thing is failed. So, at times, I think EFCC will need to dig deeper to say, okay, a whole lot of work needs to be done, because on the surface, we may say, oh, these women are corrupt, and that is what I don't like, But then there's a need to dig deeper to say, yes, this thing, there are layers of approvals. Only one person cannot perpetrate corruption. Only one person. Because there are layers of approval, from approval 1 to approval 2 to approval 3. And then there are other government agencies that need to even contribute, like BPP. Things have to pass through BPP. There has to be an approval certificate. So all these things, the investigation must be open. Right. And everybody who was found wanting must also be exposed, so that it will seem as if it's just these 2 women or 3 women that are, involved in
and that's where my next question is going to come from. When it comes to fighting corruption in this country, it seems that when it comes to women who are allegedly involved in these practices, it's a lot easier to go after them compared to when it is a man, for instance, that has been put in this position. Do you think there is a sense of bias, especially with regards to what we're seeing currently? Because a lot of people have talked about so many other ministers in the Buhari administration that blatantly should have to answer certain questions about their performance in government, about the expenditures that we've seen in public domain that doesn't make a lot of sense, that a lot of Nigerians are scratching their heads over. But unfortunately, the only and first minister that has been investigated is a woman who happens to be in the spotlight. What do you make of that? Do you think that in the fight against corruption, there is some sort of imbalance when it comes to the gender of the person involved?
I don't think there is imbalance, because, of course, it's my personal opinion anyway. I think a former minister under Obasanjo, was questioned recently, was even detained by the EFCC, taken to Kuje, prison. He just got himself a bail of about 50 million. 50 million. So, he is a man, you understand? Then, you see, under the Buhari government, I don't think there was the political will, to deal with those who were corrupt within that government, under that government. There was no political, because there were all sorts of allegations. At times, some of the things that are mentioned, I say, we're discussing them on the street, that these things were happening and they were wrong, but the government did not do anything. So if the previous government did not have the political will to act on suspected corrupt practices, and this government has that will to do so, we can't say, well, it's targeting women, because it's not only women. It's not only women. There are several others, who have been, asked, who have been questioned over, corrupt practices. Because I'm feeling that, you see, there are rules. The basic rules that that were made available to all the ministers. And then I think one of the things you do is to cover your back. Even if people are doing things under you, you must supervise. You understand? You don't trust people so much, because you can trust some person, say, well, he's my friend, well, he's an expert in this, a consultant in this matter, whatever he does, can pass. You trust people so much, they can put you in trouble. So if you are a minister, and you must supervise, you must take care, you must be sure that things are done properly. And that is not only about women, even men can be careless. Women can be careless. We've had previous ministers, former governors, who are in court over corrupt practices. And of course, these ones are quite recent, because at least several governors were even sentenced to jail terms because they were involved in corrupt practices. So I don't think it's a target at women. And if you look at, if you go to the EFCC portal, compare the number of women who have been accused of corruption, compare that with the number of men who have been accused of corruption, I think it may actually be 1 to 10. That is, it's not.
There's also the question about exposure. Women are less than likely to be exposed to, opportunities that they could get themselves involved in some of these corrupt practices, isn't it? Because we talk about representation in government, there are more men in government.
Yes,
than women,
there are more men in government. Right. But you see, there were others who have done this job. Very brilliantly. Other women, who were exposed to corruption, but we have people like Dora Akunyili of this world. May her soul rest in peace. I think she did a good job. And we have Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. She did a very good job. We had the former Minister of Finance, what's her name? The immediate past Minister of Finance, Zainab. Yes, she gave a good account of herself. And I think even under this humanitarian policy, there was this woman from, is it Kanu? Oh my God. She's I don't know what the name is. She was in charge of the social investment program under the former vice president. I think she did a very good job. Why is the name disappearing from my head? She did a very good job. She did that job. He handled that thing under the vice president, and she gave a very good account of herself. So even in spite of the fact that she was exposed, or several others were exposed, they maintained they maintained a measure of integrity and did a good job.
Do you think this particular phenomenon, Dr. Theophilus, is likely going to affect the chances of us seeing more women in government? Especially when you look at a Better Edu, for instance, as young as she is, 37, to be given that much responsibility. Halima Saliu, given that position as coordinator of the National Social Investment Program Agency, the former minister herself, Sadiya Umar, and the likes. And we've always talked about this affirmative action to see more women in government. Do you think this, set a bad precedent for those who are going to argue that, listen, look at the examples that they're setting for the next ones that are supposed to come in? Do you think that this, works against the interests of women, especially in politics or in governance?
It shouldn't. To me, it shouldn't, because we have very good women, very brilliant women who have the passion to see changes in Nigeria. We have many of them, and they should be given opportunity. Like I said, 2 women or 3 women out of many women in Nigeria who are doing a whole lot of good job. Many of them are VCs, vice chancellors of universities, that do a lot of good job. We have so many of them. There was this woman, I think she said Alile Williams. She gave a good account of herself when she was a VC of University of Benin. So we have women who are doing a lot of good work, and on the daily basis we see women who are good. You know, even in the newsroom, we see women who are good. In the banking sector, we see women who are good. So we cannot say, oh, because these two women have been, have been identified to have done some things wrongly. I mean, you should. And like I keep saying, if you look at the profile of these women, sincerely, they are not just like, you know, I don't think there should be, serious investigation into these issues, you know, because from what we know about them, you know, I don't think they were totally really bad women, you know, because like I talk about Betta Edu, you know, she did a very good job in Cross River State. You know, she did from what I heard. You know, I didn't stay there, but from what I heard, she did a very good job, and that was why the state could nominate her to give her this position at the national level. And Sadia also, I think she did a good job at the Refugee Commission. That's why when she was given that position, oh yes, this woman qualifies. So I think EFCC must do a thorough investigation. You know, I don't want us to be accused of media trial. You know, but the EFCC should do a thorough investigation. Let's know the whole truth. And let as many people as contributed to what went wrong should be exposed. You know.
But what do you make of the public opinion about this? Because as far as the public is concerned, they're guilty as charged, and they would have a lot of work to do. If at all they scale through and they come out clean, they would have a lot of work to do to...
I think they are not guilty until a court of law proves them guilty.
I'm saying as far as public opinion is concerned, which, I mean, we do know that sometimes the court of public opinion is not fair most of the times when people, especially when you're charged with something like this. But do you think that, you know, for Betta Edu, for instance, she did say that this whole campaign was supposed to target her character and to malign her, even though these charges are quite real, and we've seen the steps taken so far by the presidency to course correct. The president has suspended all programs under the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, especially in connection with the National Social Investment Program Agency, for 6 weeks. He set up a committee under the Minister of the Economy to rejig and to look into what needs to be reworked and all of these things.
I think that aligns with what I said earlier, that the system needs to be looked into. You know, the system needs to be looked into. I don't know how it works, you understand? But I'm feeling that when the ministry was created, those who headed the various departments, maybe they set up the system. And unfortunately, if people set up the system, a system by themselves, they will leave loopholes that will enable them, you know, to benefit, you know. So even if they are borrowing a system from other parts of the world, they will say, okay, look, if we do it like this, we cannot make money. Some persons, not only a few persons do it anyway. But then, so the system needs to be reviewed, because a system that will allow some persons to have access to so much money, you know, to so much money. You know, I think at the point, the ministry, when going from state to state, will pack a whole lot of cash, you know, move them from maybe Abuja to wherever they were going to, huge sums of cash, or go to the central bank office and bring out cash. I will see cash on display. You understand? Sincerely, when there are cash transactions, too much of cash transactions, there's likely to be corruption. So it's good that, you know, government is trying to say, let's look at, it's a very good project. It's a very good idea, you know, to say, okay, social investment, intervention in the, it's very good. But then let's fine tune the system so that it can reduce this exposure to corruption.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we do come back, there's a lot more to unpack, as well as to navigate regarding this particular talking point. Corruption has become the bane of Nigeria's growth and development. And of course, we're talking about it, plus the twist around how the three main antagonists or otherwise in this particular conversation are all women, and whether there's a connection between why that is something that needs to be considered as an element. And when we do come back from this break, we expect you to be a part of the conversation. If you have a question, a suggestion, a thought that you would like to share with us, we'd love to hear from you on the program today. Join us again after the break for more on Sunday Politics. Welcome back to the program. Watching Sunday Politics on Trust TV. Here's a quick reminder. You can watch the show on the go by joining our YouTube live stream. And of course, follow us across all our social media platforms so you don't miss out on all of our content. Tonight on the program, we're discussing women and corruption in Nigeria, and you can imagine we're channeling what has been a national discourse around developments in the Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation Ministry, where the current minister is under investigation by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, and her predecessor, Sadiya Umar, is also under the radar of the EFCC. Plus, the national coordinator who has been suspended by the president is also under investigation, all in connection with graft and mismanagement of resources. If you have a thing or two to say about this conversation, feel free to join the conversation. Our phone lines are open. Give us a call tonight and tell us what you make of this development, especially the fact that the women are involved in this unfortunate development that has a lot of Nigerians talking about the way forward. We've been in conversation with the program director of the Daily Trust Foundation, Dr. Theophilus Abba. Doctor, just before the break, I wanted us to segue into the conversation around whether you think there is a double standard when a man is involved in a corruption case, how the media reports it, how Nigeria perceives it, and when there's a woman involved. It does appear that people get excited to talk about it when a woman is involved a lot more than when a man is involved. What is your take on that?
Maybe because I'm still associated with the media, I don't want to say we are guilty as charged.
Right.
Because we've done a lot of reporting about corruption, among men. I think the majority, if you enter into our libraries and you say, let's compare how many men have been reported to be corrupt by journalists compared with the number of women. You can't compare the two. Like I was saying earlier, many governors, former ministers, former commissioners, people who have held different positions, men who have held different positions in the government have been accused of corruption, taken to court, and journalists have followed their stories from day to day in law court, at EFCC, at ICPC, and all this and others. So there's so much that journalists have done reporting men who are corrupt than they have reported women. So I don't think journalists should be accused of being biased, because they are following. If it were a man who was in charge, sincerely, journalists would say have done the same thing.
So journalists just see it as a news story. You don't think that women are getting an extra level of attention when they're in the news? From
my own perspective, I don't think. Because if you just say corruption in Nigeria, go on Google and you find out, see so much, has written about men, But although, you see, when the woman is involved, at times because they are women, at times because they are beautiful, you see their pictures being flashed, everybody shares their pictures and things like that. But that doesn't mean that journalists are biased.
There's also the sense that there's a cultural element to it, that you don't expect a woman to be in the wrong, and when she's wrong about something, society looks at it in a much different way. So to say, it's almost like it is unexpected of them to do something wrong, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. When you talk about unexpected of a woman to do wrong, perhaps like I said earlier, women are very proud, so we expect that they maintain their dignity, they want to ensure that their integrity is intact, so they may not want to engage in open, apparent wrongdoing. Because every human being does something wrong. Maybe it's something that will be scandalous. They may not want to be involved in scandals, in things that are apparent, things that will expose them to public ridicule or things like that. Maybe a woman will not want to be.
But also, in talking about what happens in government, we've seen the unceremonial departure of a minister under the Buhari administration. I think his first minister, the first female minister of finance, Kemi Adeosun, when she left unceremoniously, and also we've seen the suspension of Betta Edu under the Tinubu administration. And the question has been asked, when there are principles, for instance, when a woman is involved, you always see the president swift to take action, maybe not swift in some cases, but they're eager to take action if a woman does wrong. However, if there's a man involved, I do remember how the whole situation with the NYC issue came up with Adebayo Shitu, for instance, under the Buhari administration, it dragged along for quite some time there. And currently, we also have one of the companies linked to the whole saga around the humanitarian affairs, linked to the Minister of Interior, for instance. And for some Nigerians, why isn't he a part of this inquiry that is going on? What do you have to say regarding this dynamic, that if a woman is under some sort of scrutiny or question, the axe usually falls heavy on her in a swift manner compared to when a man is in the wrong, that these situations tend to drag on for quite some time?
Okay, maybe we need to be a bit scientific about it. That means that we have to put the data on the table for us to say, well, when the woman is involved, I mean, the axe is swifter. I remember during the Obasanjo regime, you know, there was a man who was involved, a minister who was involved in, I think, Minister of Interior. He was involved in some identity card scandal, you know, and he was asked to go. You know, and then under the, what do you call it, under the Yaradua administration, some ministers were also asked to leave. You know, they were made to leave. My own concern is that, you see, I would expect that before a minister is asked to leave, there will be a thorough investigation. You know, and the investigation points to the fact that the person was actually involved in wrongdoing. You know, from what I have been reading about the Beta Edu, for instance, you know, what I've been reading, you see, the EFCC, I don't think the EFCC has come out with a report to say this woman, you know, was so wrong. You understand? The report has not come out. And I was thinking that, you see, you give somebody what do you call it, the fair hearing, you understand? Then look at all the facts, interrogate everybody who has been involved in it, because like I said, there's only one person cannot engage in corruption. And then by the time you act, you know, by the time you say, okay, you have to leave, it's very, very clear that there's enough evidence, there's enough, you know, that you have got enough, documentary evidence, you have got human evidence, you know, to show that this person has done, this person is so wrong. You see, like, in the case of Sadia, you know, she was saying, I did not even know this person you are talking about. You know, so you must allow her to say what she knows. Then you have to do in-depth investigation. So I'm feeling that before the president tells a minister, resign, go, you know, you are suspended. Now, let there be a thorough investigation. You know, because she may even have more contribution to make, you know, to nation building in future. But because somebody say, oh, she's corrupt, she was supposed to move money into private account, oh, she has to go, the media is making noise, you know, the social media is condemning government, blah blah blah, and so she must do. We have to get to a level whereby you do a thorough investigation. Do you think
this is going to be a turning point in the fight against corruption by any stretch of the imagination?
Now, you see, if you talk about a turning point, the fight against corruption, these are not the first people that have been accused of corrupt practices. And like I said, this is not concluded yet. You understand? You see, the fight against corruption will be taken seriously if the president, if he has the political will to fight corruption. Now, if those in public service, you know, look at the body language of the president and say, oh, well, he's not interested in fighting corruption, they'll just do whatever they want.
What does his body language say right now? I mean, he's had to suspend 2 women that he appointed, trusted, to get the job done. And the person of the coordinator of the National Social Investment Program Agency and the minister. Isn't that
well, what I would say is this.
Sign?
Well, it looks like a good sign. But what I would say is this. You see, the president needs to sit back and look at a whole lot of things. Because this is just one ministry. you know, and to me, it's not the most high, it's not a very high profile ministry. You understand? We have other ministries. So if something like this has happened in the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, it's now time for the president to say, okay, what could be happening in other ministries? Gather intelligence and act. Because, you see, this ministry is just spending money. Money.
Yeah, doesn't this action send a clear message to all other ministers?
It needs to be consistent. It needs to be consistent. Because as far as I'm concerned, you know, there are a whole lot of things that are going wrong in the system. A whole lot of things that are going wrong that need to be addressed. Revenue generating agencies, you know, they need to be, you have to scrutinize, you know, how these revenues are coming and whether they actually, you know, we are getting this revenue the way we ought to get them. A lot of corruption is taking place in revenue generating agencies, you know. So you see, what I want to say is that, well, it looks like a good start, you know, to fight corruption. But then, even then, we need to do much more. You understand? Because this one is just, I mean, they are only there to spend money, you know. But one of the problems we have is even revenue generation. Like I would say, you are thinking that you are going to generate 18 trillion in 20, is it 18 trillion? Because you are going, the budget is 28 trillion. The deficit is 9 trillion. So we're expecting that minimum of 18 trillion will be generated. Now, which means that there's potential to generate. So how is it that over the years we've not been able to generate up to what we budgeted? You understand? We have to look in God, there must be corruption somewhere. You know, and we keep hearing, you know, if you put your ear to the ground, maybe if you're a journalist, you hear about here and there, there's corruption here and there, but nothing is done about it. So the president needs to do much more than suspending these women or this young woman, you know, to say he's fighting corruption. There's much work to do in terms of fighting corruption than just these two, Halima and Betta Edu.
Right, okay. Here's a quick reminder. Join the conversation if you can. If you want to, if you have a thing or two to say about this conversation, the number is shown on your TV screens. Do give us a call. We'd love to hear your take on this talking point. And when we look at some of the trends, Doctor, it's very clear that I think that Nigeria is in agreement that corruption is perhaps one of the top 3 challenges that this country needs to overcome to get to where we need to get to. Looking at the, you know, what is happening right now, what are your thoughts about how to create that sort of national consciousness so that we can all feel a part of this fight against corruption? Because for so long it has always been at the beck and call of the people in power. If they are motivated to go about it, then sure, why not? Even with the whistleblower policy that is supposed to incentivize the fight against corruption, we haven't seen as much as we need to really make a dent in this particular area. What are your thoughts about the way we're going about it and whether this is a national type of fight?
Well, I think all of us know that corruption is injuring the country. We all know, you know. But most times, when it comes to fighting corruption, you know, we don't have this national consensus on how to fight corruption. Now, when anyone is accused of corruption, one of the things we do, we begin to look at it from, well, is it because she's a woman? Gender will come in. Is it because she's a Muslim? Is it because she's a Christian? Is it because she's from it's a Fulani man? Is it because it's an Igbo man? You understand? You see, because there's no national consensus on fighting corruption. Even though we know that corruption is injurious to the society, you know, we don't do it in a manner that can eradicate corruption. Now, one of the things that can eradicate corruption is publicity. When somebody is corrupt, you know, and the person is seen, is investigated, and it's obvious that the person is corrupt, publicize it. But I tell you, most times, corrupt practices are hidden. And that's why the whistleblowers policy failed. Okay.
Let's head over to the phone lines. I think we have a caller on the line. Shamaki is calling in. Shamaki, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Yeah, good evening. Good evening, Ahmed and Dr. Theophilus in the studio.
It's always good to hear from you. Thank you very much for joining us. What is your take on tonight's conversation?
Yeah, actually, it's not the issue of witch hunting a woman or a woman. Immediately, Dr. Eddie was suspended. 2 executive officers also were sacked, which I believe they are men. It is very unfortunate and sympathetic to what is going on in Nigeria. Corruption has become business of the day by some politicians and government officials. The person that Nigeria gave hope in terms of zero tolerance is former President Muhammad Buhari, which he spent 8 good years without setting any example by corrupt people that found one thing. So I commend President Tinubu for his strong action. The investigation should carry thoroughly to serve as a deterrent to others who are thinking of doing it. And consequences should also be meted on this type of people, otherwise the corruption will not stop. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Samaki. Just a point, they're innocent until proven guilty as far as the law is concerned. So there you have it. I mean, we were earlier on alluding to the fact that the moment you are being investigated by EFCC or ICPC, the perception is you've done something wrong. If not, they wouldn't be looking into you. We do have someone else on the line, so let's get right to it. Hello, good evening, and thank you very much for joining us on Sunday Politics. Who is on the line and where are you calling from?
Hello.
Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening. It appears we have a challenge with the connection. Try again, call back. The number is on your TV screen. Rules of engagement: when you call in, please turn down the volume of your TV set so we can hear you clearly. The issue of perception, for instance, what do we need to do about it? Because an investigation is not conclusive that one is guilty, because the investigation could also validate your innocence.
Now, the sense of investigation.
Just a moment, Doctor. Pardon the interruption. We do have another caller on the line.
Hello.
Hello, good evening.
How are you?
Fine, thank you. Who is on the line and where are you calling from, please?
Ibrahim Ahmed from Yola.
Ibrahim Ahmed from Yola. Thank you very much for calling on the program. Go ahead, please.
All right. I'm Ibrahim Ahmed.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Okay, what is happening is this. The issue is this. As long as the big people are not put in jail forever, I said, as long as the people, the big men in politics.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. We can hear you.
Nothing is going to change in this corruption issue. We can keep on talking for it until that thing don't come. Those people who are big in government must be put in jail so that things will be better for all of us.
You don't think we have jailed enough people to make an example to serve as a deterrence?
Not at all. Not at all.
All right. All right. Okay. Thank you very much for your take on this one. Are we actually, doing that? Are we failing to make an example?
Well, the issue.
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. Okay. It appears we've lost our.
Actually, I was saying earlier, you see, the sense of investigation presupposes that something has gone wrong. When you say you are carrying out an investigation, it means that you have identified something that was disorderly, maybe not in line with laid down rules, laid down principles. That is when you go into investigation. But for the person or an investigative journalist, you don't publicize your investigation until you have done all the groundwork. You have carried out your investigation, you have got all the evidence that you need to get, and you have challenged the person that you accuse of corruption.
But to that last point, we've seen so many of these cases and the people end up with a slap on the wrist. Isn't that also a part of the problem, that you get a plea deal and something, as grand as corruption is, doesn't get punished?
Yes, yeah. Actually, it is because of how politicians interfere, in corruption cases. For instance, I remember when Farida Waziri was EFCC's chairperson, there were issues. They were saying, oh, these guys are big guys in the society,
right.
you know, so let's do plea bargain, let them drop some money and let's close the case.
Okay. As much as I would love for us to continue and land on that particular point, Dr. Theophilus, we're going to have to leave it here for now. We're out of time. Thank you most kindly for the analysis and for your insight. All right, and that is our show for you today. Thank you most kindly for joining us on Sunday Politics. We appreciate the calls. We appreciate your time and company. We'll be back next week, live and exclusive as always on Trust TV. My name is Abdullahi Ahmed. Thank you for your time. We'll see you next time.